Let's switch gears and talk MVP. We'll break and we'll do some Cy Young in a bit, but let's talk. Tino, what do you got there? American League. If you got American League, let's start right there. These are the couple picks that you like here. Jose Ramirez at 22-1 and Corey Seager, now a member of the Texas Rangers, at 28-1. As you see atop the board, some of this has changed as well. Shohei is now 4-1. Vlad and Trout are now plus 450. I believe Judge has dropped to 18. So there's been a little bit of movement. Of course, you see Ramirez there at 20-1. You got yourself a better number. Jordan at 22-1. And you mentioned Luis Robert you were considering as well at 28-1. Why did you go with Seager and Jose? I mean, they're both really good players, but explain yourself, sir.
Yeah, so for MVP in the AL, I think it's so tough because it's already like you're just so far behind the eight ball going up against Ohtani and Trout, because Ohtani has the rare advantage of doing two things at once that we saw last year, and then Trout's just the best baseball player ever. So you're already at an inherent disadvantage of not being those guys, and then Vlad even being up in that range is. I totally understand it because he's phenomenal, but those three guys, it's so tough to beat. So if you're not betting on one of those guys, I think you need to take a little bit of a different look at it. And the reason why Seager was one of my favorite picks is because I think you need one of two things to win MVP. Is either you need to be the best player on one of the best teams in the division, or you need to be just one of the best players in the league. And I think Ohtani, Trout, and Vlad had those kind of wrapped up. So if you're looking to take home an MVP bet that isn't one of those guys, Seager on the Rangers, who I think people are kind of counting on being an up-and-coming team. They went out and spent a ton of money at 28-1. He makes some sense because if the Angels are a team that maybe doesn't compete the way that they want to and kind of how they've been competing over the last few years, I'm sorry, Meaney, but the Rangers can be a team to take advantage of that. And if they're going to be one of the better teams in the division and in the AL, I think that could go a long way in terms of boosting Seager's production and his kind of voting efficiency, right? And then Ramirez is just one of the best players that I think just isn't getting enough credit because he's kind of going to be on a bad team. And I mean, he's just one of the best hitters in baseball. And I think that if he was on a better team, or maybe he didn't have the kind of the year that he had a year and a half ago, where he kind of struggled for the 75% of the season, that he would be up there with the Vlad and Ohtani and Trout type numbers. Maybe he would be like 10-1 or plus 1,000 or something like that. But I just think he's just one of the better hitters in baseball. So I think that number is just a little too low.
Yeah, it's interesting about Jose Ramirez just because of some of the trade rumors, but I mean, he's clearly still one of the best players in baseball. In fantasy baseball leagues. I mean, I just talked round 3 of NFBC leagues in the first block, but we did round 1 and he was pick number 2 on average. And in some spots, like the first pick off the board. I mean, he touches a lot of categories. If Cleveland does hang around, he's probably a big reason why they do. So I see that side of it as well. But if he were to get traded to the Blue Jays or something, then like that would just be like, oh no, like how would he win an MVP on a team like that? But again, we're speculating. I do like the Seager call, and Vlad, and with some spoiler alert stuff. I know a couple years ago he called like Christian Yelich out of nowhere. So he's been known for like that. Who's the next Christian Yelich? Who is this year's Christian Yelich? And I don't know if he would crush me for saying this or not, but I don't think he would. I mean, we're close to the baseball season now. His content is great. There's a lot of great stuff in the draft kit. His Christian Yelich of like this year is Corey Seager. Now, he's a Dodgers guy. He sees them all the time. But even still, he did give a lot of love in the article to Corey Seager. So I do like those calls. I got to sprinkle something on Robert, though. I have to, man.
Yeah,
I want to get in before. Like, I feel like this time next year, if you and I are chatting about AL MVP, I think his odds are a little bit different. Just before we move over to the NL, I wonder if last year is a precedent. Like, I said this before to some people, I want to get your thoughts. If Ohtani does the same thing as last year, very similar, is it his award to lose again? Or are they just like, okay, you did something that you never done, that we've never really seen before, we gave you the MVP, but is it going to be like basketball where, even years with LeBron I thought should have won the MVP, but they gave to other guys, like Derrick Rose comes to mind. Like I thought LeBron should have won one year, and another year too when Nash went back to back, I thought Dirk should have got it, and it was just Nash. And then they were like, okay, fine, we'll give it to you next year, Dirk. Like, is that going to happen, do you think, in baseball? Like, did Shohei set the precedent, or are they going to try to, like, is Trout and Ohtani going to chip into each other and they'll just give it to somebody else?
That's the one factor I think could be interesting. If you have the Angels either maybe even not playing to their peak, or maybe just struggling a little bit.
Let's just be honest about the Angels. They're just going to be an average 500 team, and they're going to disappoint everybody, and they're
Which
not going
is
to make
crazy
playoffs.
to think, because you have two guys that are essentially MVP favorites, and we're talking about this, but it's been like that for the past, like, ever since they've
Yes.
gotten Trout, really. But I
Yeah.
think that's the one factor that could hold Ohtani back, is that, okay, he has Trout, maybe that they're going to eat away not only at people's perception, but of legitimate votes. But in theory, I think he should win it every year, as long as he has just a good year, because just such an advantage. Like when you look at the WAR numbers, wins above replacement, that's a big thing that the voters like to look at. He's instantly going to be 2 or 3 above everyone else just because of the pitching. So like it's just an inherent advantage that, honestly, great call by you last year. I think you got it 50-1. It was something that everyone should have been on. So I think that is just an inherent advantage that Ohtani has. If he has a good year, he should be the guy. It all comes down to perception, though, and voting, and how that would play out between him and Trout.
Yeah. I mean, when you bet it every year, Kyle, you can't really take too much credit. I bet it the year before, but my whole thinking with this guy was, if, again, like what I said when I bet it at the time, is that if he pitches over 100 innings or close to it, he gets over 100 strikeouts and hits 25 bombs, and it was even better than I thought. I mean, he hit decent average and he stole double-digit bags. I just feel like if he does the same thing again and we don't see a Triple Crown winner, I just don't know how he can't be the MVP again, because what he's doing is pretty unreal. So we did some American League stuff. Let's talk some National League MVP. Again, we have a board here of the top. This is from DraftKings. Things change pretty quickly. We do have the updated version, because last time we chatted about this, Tatis was up near the top. You got Juan Soto there at plus 280, Ronald Acuna Jr. at 7-1, Harper 9-1, Mookie at 9-1, Freddie Freeman, another Dodger, man, at 12-1. I can't believe these guys, the Dodgers, just get whatever they want. Look at them: Betts, Freeman, Turner. Tatis in there at 18-1, Olsen, Riley, who we gave a lot of love to in the last segment to potentially lead the bigs in bombs, Arenado, Francisco Lindor, Vlad's Yelich, Pete Alonso, Tyler O'Neill. And then I had to put Jacob deGrom on this list because, dude, there was a moment where he was not only favored to win the Cy Young, but favored to win the MVP before the injuries did pile up for him. Who do you like on this board?
At the top, I try to stay away from the guys at the top like I did in the AL, because you don't really need to make a case for, guys like Trout and Vlad and even Juan Soto. But it's Acuna for me, and it's a little bit different in this instance, just because of the fact that I think he would be the favorite if there were no injury concerns. And obviously, I know that is a big risk right now. It sounds like they're targeting a May return, which probably leaves him at a good point, a month out of the season. But last year, throughout the early part of the season, he looked like he was going to be on track to be the MVP. He was playing, phenomenally. And I think Acuna is one of the best players in the MLB. And I think with no Freeman now, I think this is a chance for him to take a further step in showing that he is the kind of the next big thing, not only in the NL, but in the entire Major League Baseball. So I like Acuna a lot this year. And I think at this number, you're kind of just betting on a little bit of a discount because of the injury, because like I mentioned, if there were no injury concerns, I think he would be favorited. So that's the thing with Acuna. He'd be my number one choice.
Yeah, and it's hard to argue that. I do believe he's one of the best players in baseball too. And who knows, even he could still win the MVP for missing the first month. There's some talk that maybe he'll just DH, right, and
Yep.
Not in the field for a little bit. So we could see him back sooner rather than later. I wonder how much the odds will change. I don't think that they will. I originally, when I saw your pick last night, I was thinking, if he doesn't play if he misses the first month, would he drop down to 10-1 or 12-1? And I just don't think that he will, Kyle, because he's just that. We all know how great he is, and I think people would automatically hammer that if they saw him at any moment at like 12 or 14-1. You agree with that?
Yeah, unless we saw someone like like Soto, or one of the Dodgers have like an incredible month to start, then I don't think there's any way that Acuna would drop too much. I think this is kind of his floor right here.
What do you like about Yelich? What are you expecting from the bounce back here with Christian Yelich? Last year,
Yeah.
475 plate appearances, only 9 bombs, but he's only a couple years removed from 44 homers and a 329 average. Like, he still has a lot of pop in his bat.
It's all about health for Yelich. I know he's dealing with the back injury that seems a little bit more of a concern. He fractured his knee last year, which is just a complete fluke injury. The back injury is the one that I think is the substantial one that could be something that lingers throughout his career. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know anything about how they can heal up his back and keep him healthy for the course of the year. But again, it's much like the Stanton thought on the home run leader. If this guy stays healthy, he is on a team that I think could be a team that makes a deep run in the NL. We know that they have the pitching. We know that they have some of the newly added bats like Renfroe, like you mentioned, and we know what Yelich can be if he stays healthy and if he's at his peak. So I mean, this is a guy that just won the MVP a couple of years ago. So 28-1. I think that's a pretty good number in terms of just hoping that the guy is able to stay healthy. If this Brewers team turns out to be what they can be and what they are kind of being built to be, it's going to be based on their pitching and based on Yelich having a big year. So it's more so just a value at the rate that you're getting at Yelich because of the injury stuff.
Yeah, and the upside and the ceiling.
Yeah.
I think the Brewers are a lock to win the division, and I like them at 15-1 to win the World Series.
Yep.
I think when they get into the playoffs and they're rolling out a rotation that's Woodruff and Burns and Peralta with that bullpen that they have, I think they're a very, very scary team.